Boys, boys, boys. Now today it's the Spokane Kid and I'm here for a classic Andrew rant actually. I'm a classic overanalyzer. I have a lot of crazy theories and today is one of them, so strap in for it. This one's about just the misuse of the word cool in my opinion. People have just watered it down these days to mean like good essentially. And to me, that's not what cool is. Cool is cool. Cool is James Dean wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, smoking a cig, wearing sunglasses. Like, that is cool. Cool is rebellious. Cool is counterculture. It doesn't just mean good. And I'm the guy that, like I said, I just get triggered by that. Ultimately, I feel like we all know what cool is when we see it, but it's just so hard to pin it down. And ultimately, I want to define what exactly is cool. And since this is a channel revolving around clothes, I'm going to bring it back into clothing and how it ties into trends in fashion. Now, trust me, I am fully aware of the fact of the incredible irony surrounding the making of this video. It is not cool to talk for 10 straight minutes about what is cool, and that irony is not lost on me. Now, if there's one thing I do know that's cool in this world, it's hitting that motherfucking subscribe button, baby. Hit the like button too while you're at it. TSK all day, baby. Now let's get into it. So I was doing research on this topic and I looked up on YouTube, I type in what is cool. And I wanted to see if, maybe some other YouTubers have some good insight on the topic. And let me save you a quick search. They don't. There's no good videos out there on it. It's just more people misusing it. One of the girls is like, yo, you know what's cool to me? Respecting people. I'm just like, what? That is not what's cool. Another guy, he uploads a video that's essentially a video podcast, and he might have been the lamest person I've ever seen. One of his examples is his wife as the coolest person he knows, and simultaneously he ends up describing her as so not edgy that she's round, he jokes. That is literally the opposite of cool. Now, that being said, I do want to preface my argument by saying that cool is not the apex of human characteristics. Like, I'd rather be a good guy than a cool guy. Like, I'd rather be a kind and likable guy than a cool guy. So I'm just here to say I want to get to the bottom of what it all actually means. I'm fascinated by language. Linguistics just tickles my fancy, and it bothers me when people misuse the word. I just want to pin it down for you guys. So what is cool? And I did a lot of research on this, as I always do for these videos. You know I'm the historian out here. I found 2 TED Talks on the subject that are actually really good on trying to pin down what the thesis of what is cool would be. And honestly, if this video interests you, you should go watch those. They're really good. Now let's take a look at one of the coolest people alive, Kanye West. Now, one of the things he said is he doesn't smile in photos because it wouldn't look as cool. So maybe we're onto something here. James Dean was also inexpressive, so maybe inexpressiveness might be what's cool. Now, they actually did some research on this. They took some pictures of people that were smiling and then people that were inexpressive, black and white. They just did across the board advertisements, photos, and they asked people what is cooler, who it looks cooler. And not only was there no correlation between inexpressiveness and coolness, but in fact it showed the opposite. The people smiling actually got higher coolness ratings on average. And if you ask people on the street what's cool, they'll give contradicting statements like, cool is what's popular, or cool is what's being different. And it's like, well, what is it? So they ended up doing research on whether sameness or being differentiated scored higher as being cool. And implicitly, I think we all know the answer to this one. Being different is cooler. So divergence from the norm is what's seen as being cool. And that's because divergence from the norm shows autonomy, and ultimately autonomy is what's cool. But it goes further than that because not all autonomous behavior is actually cool. For example, let's take a school uniform. And it's cool to break from the norm and do things like wear your tie loose, unbutton the buttons, roll your sleeves up. That's a subtle defiance of the dress code that is seen as cool. But taking it to an extreme, coming to school and wearing no pants, like sure, that's autonomous, but that's taking it too far. There's got to be a delicate balance that you strike. And you got to be autonomous yet appropriate. And it's like surfing, you got to find that sweet spot of balance. And really, what do I mean by appropriate? Because honestly, appropriate is one of the least cool words I've ever heard. That's like people saying like, stop that, that's inappropriate. And really it just means that the divergence needs to have a reason for it that can be backed up. Like the school uniform, let's take that to an extended example. Breaking that norm is considered cool because the people and the students that define the zeitgeist of what is cool, they determine that the school dress code is stupid and unnecessary. So when someone breaks the rules, it's for a good reason. Now, what if the school dress code was to honor maybe a deceased classmate? All of a sudden, defining that is not really as cool because it's no longer appropriate. So it's defined by the people around it. And really, I want to start with a history of the word cool. And it came from Lester Young, who was a legendary black musician out of Harlem, New York. And back then, black musicians were expected to smile on stage. And this was known as Uncle Tomming. Another legendary musician, Miles Davis, hated this more than anything. He thought white people were trying to make them perform for them on stage. And so as a subtle act of defiance, they started acting inexpressive on stage, both on stage and walking out in public. So when Young was saying that I'm cool or that's cool, he was really saying I'm relaxed in this environment in my own style. And it kind of contrasts the hot and the cold, the excited, aggressive, intense feelings on the cold side, which is unfeeling, efficient, and mechanistic. Jazz musicians will often refer to the concise phrase relaxed intensity as a synonym for the word cool. And Lester Young was honestly one of the coolest people to ever grace the planet. Not only would he keep his cool, relaxed demeanor, but he would tilt his saxophone at a unique 45-degree angle to be different from others. He would wear stylish clothes. He had his signature hat. He would wear sunglasses at night indoors as a marker of cool self-defiance and self-insulation. And he even had a set of personal slang that was so deep and intricate that even his own manager said he couldn't understand him for the first 3 months. And you can see how this inexpressiveness, his style, his fashion, even his slang was so different from the norm and just showed autonomy. And it was for a good reason too that could be backed up. Something everyone could get behind, a backlash against racist practices. And these icons of cool are cultural guides for the rest of us. Lester Young, Elvis Presley, James Dean, Muhammad Ali. Like, Elvis was so different for his time that it was said before Elvis there was nothing. Because he was so different, it shattered everyone's worldview and expectations and they had to begin anew. And I'm gonna have to quote my man from the TED Talk on this one because the way he says this is perfect. He says, remember, coolness is not synonymous with celebrity or talent. Cool is rebellion with critical intent and social import. Cool is the process by which iconic rebels carve out a new cultural space for a given generation. Coolness is stylish, authentic rebellion. And for that rebellion to be important, it had to be public and against unethical authority and must resonate with others. I rebel, therefore we exist. And that means my rebellion creates the opportunity for yours. That rebellion is only important if it has a better objective for society. Someone who is cool is not a role model, a hero, or a saint. Quote, cool is the process by which we negotiate identity through modernity using figures in popular culture. And this means that we don't necessarily want to be these celebrities, but we use them as an example of how to get the key to free ourselves from our own personal jail. They show us how going against the norm can free us from the bind that we have. And if we follow that example, I too can be free. Now let's bring it back to trends. We're going to take a look at the trend life cycle here. And let me draw just a terrible graph really quick. I'm going to get some paper on this one. So here's my very crude drawing of the trend life cycle. So down here at the beginning of the curve, we have the innovators. These are the cool people. Next, we have the early adopters, and they're the people at the forefront of trends. They have their nose on the zeitgeist, and they're picking up things early. At the top of the curve, we have the populace and the general masses adopting the trend, maybe even some people that just like generally keep up on fashion. And as we start to slow down here, we have the late adopters. At the very end, behind the times. And so when I very first got into fashion, honestly, I was right over here, maybe just hopping on trends when they came along, maybe even late adopter at certain points. I was not following things very closely. And the more I've gone along, I've tried to take risks and hop on things earlier and earlier. And I would like to think I've moved down into here into early adopters. You should look back a year ago on your outfits and think that they're not that great, and that just shows your growth stylistically. So like I said, nowadays I'd like to think I hang out in here more often, but the more I've gotten to clothes and reoriented my life to be entirely around clothing, the more friends I've made who are actually down here, the cool people in the early adopter stage that are actually setting the trends. And honestly, my friends are so fucking cool, and I get most of my outfit inspiration from them and not online so much on places like Instagram. And my thesis here is that trends are a direct response to the fact that by definition, cool is a rebellion. If skinny jeans are what's most popular right now, by definition, it cannot be cool. What happens when something becomes cool to a broad audience is it becomes the new norm, and thus no longer cool. And these innovators wanting to be autonomous reject that trend and start wearing wider and wider pants as a subtle defiance to this trend. Then early adopters see the innovators wearing baggier pants and they start wearing baggier pants themselves too. Eventually, the rest of the populace catches on and the innovators, keeping their autonomy, move on to the next thing that they think is cool for themselves. Early adopters catch on to that and the cycle just continues. And ultimately, what does this mean for you and me? Ultimately, I think I need to be more autonomous in my style. I gotta start taking more risks stylistically and stop just caring about what other people think. And is the goal there to start a trend? No, because that wouldn't be cool. By trying to be cool, it's a self-defeating process because it shows that you want approval, which isn't cool. My advice is to ignore trends. Do your own thing. Follow designers that you are really passionate about. Don't pay resale for the popular items that everyone wants. Buy from a brand something that's low-key that everyone is sleeping on. Wear something local and support the homies. And I want to challenge everyone that's watching this to take some sort of risk themselves for their personal style and not care what anyone thinks. And at first I was really hesitant to talk about this subject because, like I said at the beginning, talking about what's cool for 10 minutes isn't cool. But ultimately I decided to screw what everyone thinks, post the video anyway because I'm passionate about it, and just make it. Wait a sec. Does that make it cool?